And what that means is that no one's going to want to dedicate a lot of time, money, and effort into a virtual environment or experience if they can't own their stuff, right? So like, this is kind of a bad analogy I like to use, but if you're in the Soviet Union, you don't want to build a big business or like try to gain wealth or anything like that, because at any time the government can just seize your stuff, right? So that's why people in the Soviet Union, they want to go to Europe, or they want to go to Australia or America, whatever. They want to go to these places with strong property rights because they feel confident that all that time, money, and effort that they put into their businesses will be rewarded. And no one's gonna, you can tweet, hey, screw the American president or whatever, and you won't get your stuff seized, right? And if we have property rights in real life, then why don't we have property rights in our virtual lives, right?
Layer 1 is a podcast and community dedicated to helping you master all things crypto. We'll be bringing you the best interviews with project executives, technical analysis for trading of the most popular cryptocurrencies, and insight into what's actually happening behind the scenes.
As you join us each episode, you're going to hear about tokens, fundraisers, investments, and even crypto conspiracies. But please remember that nothing we say should be considered financial or legal advice.
Come join us on this journey, and welcome to Layer 1.
All right, good morning, good evening, good night. It's another Layer 1 podcast. We are coming at you hot with one of the leaders in the NFT space. I'm so happy that I got to say Layer 1 podcast. We haven't done these in, I think, almost like 2 weeks. So I'm really excited to get to our guest, but I'm also excited to hear from my man, Dimitri. What's going on, Dimitri?
Yeah, man, I'm super excited. It's been a while. I know I've talked to you guys, specifically how we need to have more guests and get back into interviewing. And finally, we do have an exciting guest. Q, what do we have?
Yeah, we have Andrew Steinwold. So if you're at all in the NFT industry, you know that he is a leader in that space. He's also a founder of Sfermion. You have to correct me if I'm wrong there. Sfermion. Okay, yeah. So I totally botched that. Maybe I'll edit that out post episode. We'll see. But how are you doing today, Andrew? We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on. I've been a big fan for a long time, and I really appreciate the invite. And just excited to chat about NFTs.
Yeah, Andrew said next time he's going to have his green screen ready for us. But this time, all I want to hear is about how you got into crypto, man. And then we'll move ourselves into the NFT discussion. It's such a broad discussion. So let's see if we can stay on schedule.
Awesome. All right. So my journey began at the end of 2013. I learned about Bitcoin through some source. I'm not really sure how, but I was in college at the time. I saw Bitcoin was at $200. And everyone was saying it was going to go higher, and it went from like 150 to 200. So I was like, oh man, this is going to go $300, right? So I ended up buying some Bitcoin. Not a huge amount. I was still in college, so not like a ton of money, but a large amount for myself. And it actually went up to $1,000 per Bitcoin. And I was like, I think I'm going to do this for the rest of my, like, I'm amazing. I'm the smartest person I've ever met, right? Like my ego was just so high. And then about a week later, it crashed. And it wasn't immediate. It was like a very boom, boom, boom. And then I ended up selling everything at $200 again. So, for a week I was on cloud 9. And then after that, just back down to earth. But what was really intriguing was that I was like, everyone on the forums, which is where I was getting all my info, everyone on the forums was so passionate about Bitcoin and so passionate about blockchain and all this stuff. And I didn't know what blockchain was. I didn't really know what Bitcoin was. And a lot of people actually were saying that, okay, Bitcoin might not, it might die. It might not be the thing, but blockchain, this technology is the real deal, is the thing that's going to really, power this next phase of the internet and all this stuff. So I started researching, started learning about it. And I got hooked after a few weeks because I'm not technical. So it took me quite a while for me to understand what was going on. But when it did click, I was like, oh my gosh, like these people are correct. This is going to be huge. And I actually dropped out of college. I moved to the Middle East. I worked for a Saudi hospitality conglomerate for a few years. And I was living in Dubai at the time. And this is in 2014. And I learned about Ripple. And Ripple's biggest use case was remittance. And so I became obsessed with Ripple. I was like,
oh no.
Gosh, I know, right? How times have changed. But I was like, XRP is huge. Ripple is huge, right? And I even tried to set up a small remittance business over there utilizing Ripple technology. And like XRP is like the base pair for like you'd input your dirhams into a kiosk, and then on the back end we convert an XRP, and then it goes into like the Filipino pesos in the Philippines. Some crazy scheme, right? Anyways, I met with a developer out there. We were chatting, and basically it absolutely ended up going nowhere because the developer thought I was insane. And obviously a guy who's really young, no skill set, no, talking about blockchain, which wasn't that exciting, sexy back then. And anyways, I was pretty flabbergasted. I was like, I can't believe this guy doesn't see the vision here. But I was like, okay, whatever. I'm going to keep on trying. Moved back to the States in 2016, and I was like, I want to focus on crypto and blockchain. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to figure it out, right? And it took me a pretty long time to, I was pitching my friends like, hey, my technical friends, hey, we got to launch a, blockchain-based accounting system for like small governments, so we can track where our tax dollars are going, like crazy ideas, right? None of my friends would join me because obviously, again, no relevant experience. Like I was living in the Middle East. Like they're like, where were you? What was going on? So I've been researching and investing along the way. 2017 happened. I suddenly had enough capital where I could launch a fund. And the reason I decided to launch a fund was because, I'm not technical again, and I couldn't build something by myself. No one would join me. So I thought the way that I can contribute to the ecosystem was by investing and by giving capital to the best teams and projects in the ecosystem. And so, I knew nothing about funds. I reached out to my good buddy who I've known since I was 6 years old in Chicago. And after college, he went to Hong Kong to go work in private equity. So reached out to him, and we obviously been chatting for years, and especially about crypto. He was very interested for a long time. And I said, hey, I'm going to do this thing. Do you want to join? And so luckily, he was actually transitioning between offices from Hong Kong to Singapore. He didn't want to do that. And so he said, you know what? Yeah, let's give it a go. And thank God for that. He left, moved to Chicago. We launched the funds. And that's basically how I learned, got involved in crypto. And, we learned a ton of lessons through that process, but one of them was that outperforming BTC is extremely difficult. We're just two guys, we're not quants or anything like that. And so I realized that we need to specialize. And that's basically when I stumbled upon NFTs in February of 2019.
Yeah, so let's touch on the timeline of you founding that investment firm. It was kind of hard to miss for a little while there in 2017. When did that start? Did you guys get in on like the perfect entry as far as like starting to invest in project? And then what was your kind of investment thesis? What were you investing in back then?
Yeah, so back then, basically we were looking at equity and tokens, but we quickly realized that any equity projects that are approaching us or that we can get access to are not great. Because we're competing with Polychain and A16Z and these kind of bigger funds that have great brand names. Actually, I don't even know if A16Z was in at that time, but yeah, we basically had no edge there on the equity side. And so we said, okay, you know what? After a little bit, tokens only, and it was really just we were assessing projects on the fundamentals. Trying to look at the team, the product, token economics, the community, stuff like that. And which is funny because in crypto still, it's fundamentals almost don't. They almost don't matter. I mean, I don't want to say they don't matter at all, but you can look at something that's fundamentally you think is great and checks all the boxes, but in reality, whether or not it'll perform is totally like up to the narrative and the hype and the marketing, right? So yeah, basically we did that it's still operational today. We're still alive, still kicking, which is great because a lot of our buddies, their funds blew up and they're moving on to different things now. But yeah, basically we were okay with our performance, and our LPs were okay with our performance. It wasn't incredible, but wasn't terrible by any means. We were positive, but again, going back to specialization, we knew that if we wanted to dominate a certain sector and really outperform and be a player, that we needed to specialize. And I went to NFT.NYC. So I bought CryptoKitties back in the day, 2017, played with them. Didn't really make the connection. I was like, these are cute, these are fun, whatever. But the whole thesis wasn't there. And then I went to NFT.NYC, which was in February of 2019. And I was walking around trying to figure out what was going on. There's 250 people at the entire conference, which was like a big NFT conference for the time. And I saw a guy who was just chilling on his iPad by himself. And he was like messing around. I go, hey man, what's up? My name's Andrew. And we start chatting. And I was like, hey, show me what you're doing. And he's like this crazy metaverse guru type guy who I'm actually good friends with now. And he was basically showing me all this technology that he'd been working on and the possibilities. And he was showing me virtual worlds, and he was in this virtual world walking around, his character, and then he would log in a computer in that virtual world and like play a game on the computer in the virtual world. And so and we started chatting about like property rights and how NFTs enable property rights in digital worlds. And it was funny because so I ended up talking to this guy for 4.5 hours. I didn't go to the conference, and I got my thesis for my fund right then and there, which was that NFTs enable a true metaverse to form because they enable property rights in digital worlds. It's kind of long-winded, but what it means is, a metaverse is a virtual environment that people live, work, and play in. And what that means is that no one's going to want to dedicate a lot of time, money, and effort into a virtual environment or experience if they can't own their stuff, right? So like, this is kind of a bad analogy I like to use, but if you're in the Soviet Union, you don't want to build a big business or like try to gain wealth or anything like that, because at any time the government can just seize your stuff, right? So that's why people in the Soviet Union, they want to go to Europe, or they want to go to Australia or America, whatever. They want to go to these places with strong property rights because they feel confident that all that time, money, and effort that they put into their businesses will be rewarded. And no one's gonna. You can tweet, "Hey, screw the American president" or whatever, and you won't get your stuff seized, right? And if we have property rights in real life, then why don't we have property rights in our virtual lives, right? And so that made total sense to me, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is totally crazy," because we're talking about with crypto a transformation of money, value, finance, absolutely massive markets, both with NFTs and wider blockchain. You're talking about the emergence of a metaverse, which is a transformation of our society. Because if you look at these trends of technological immersion, so you start off with telegraph, then telephone, then email, and before it was telegraph, we couldn't hear; it was just the messages, and then we had telephone, which is audio, and then we had internet, which is constant communication. And now we're doing video chat, so I can see you and you can hear me. And so if you take that, that's where it's becoming more immersive, the technology, and also time spent online, right? So I don't know about you guys, but I spend the vast majority of my waking hours staring at screens, whether that's my phone, computer, or whatever. And I think in the UK, they did a study, and I don't know I don't know who did the study, so it could have been bullshit, but it was the average citizen in the UK now spends like 44 years of their lives staring at screens. And that's through TV, computer, phones, right? And that's aggregate, and I don't know if it's starting from like when you're a child or what, but that's kind of the study that I read. But yeah, it's majority of my waking hours are spent staring at screens. So if you take technology is becoming more immersive, plus the amount of time you spend on screens, you have to imagine that in 10, 20, 30, 50 years, we're going to be inside a virtual environment and we're going to be hanging out, right? So that's a trend, or those are trends that are happening. And you have property rights now that it's now possible. And so I was like, okay, put those two together. We're talking about a metaverse. And so basically started investing and researching in the NFT space, launched Sfermion, which is an entity that's focused on the NFT ecosystem, launched that in September of 2019. And then launched Zima Red, which is just a content brand. It's a podcast newsletter all about NFTs in the metaverse, and launched that in October of 2019. And yeah, here we are a year later, and things are going well.
Wow, that's amazing. There's so many things to unpack here. I don't even
Yes.
know where to start, but no, it was good. It was very good. I like the part about the metaverses a lot. So you talked about the virtual environments, right? And all these worlds. I was actually, Q was talking to me about NFTs, and then, I was like, kind of, I don't know. And then, once I saw like Decentraland and Sandbox and all that stuff and properties, getting set up and all that stuff. And I was like, wow, that's pretty actually exciting. And especially right now, as we, in this weird environment with the virus, right? And all that stuff that's going on, a lot of people are spending time at home and, are on their screens, right? So they're spending more time, maybe conversing people online or meeting people and so on. So my question is, though, even though we've seen growth in these metaverses, like Decentraland, for example, where do you think we are right now? We're still kind of in the beginning stages, because it seems like we haven't seen a lot of like conferences or big events that would attract a lot of people that would be in these metaverses and spend time there. Why do you think we haven't seen anything like that just yet?
It's a really good question. I don't know. I think it comes down to basically why have we not seen wider adoption and increased activity in this ecosystem? And it comes down to, at least for the blockchain based side, because I don't really know. I know the basics about the non-blockchain based stuff like Oculus Quest and stuff like that, but I really know more about the blockchain based stuff. It comes down to the usability. And I had my sister. I was telling her about cryptovoxels, and she wanted to buy a piece of land inside the cryptovoxels. And she had a really funny comment, which was that she's never found it harder to buy the money that is going to be used to purchase this piece of land, right? She's like, wait a second. So you have to spend US dollars to buy this thing called ethereum or ether, and then you take the ether and you buy the land. She's like, that doesn't make any sense to me, right? And teaching her to use MetaMask was a huge pain. And so it really comes down to there's a ton of barriers, and this is widespread in crypto, right? There's a ton of UI, UX, and just usability factors that come into making. We basically need to make crypto much more accessible for everyone, and we need to make payment gateways much easier for people to enter the space. And once those factors are solved, I feel like it's really easy, and it's really understandable for people to say, all right, there's a piece of virtual land, I want to buy it, put in my credit card, done. Versus like, okay, you need to get the Ethereum, then you need to do this and blah, blah, blah. So yeah.
It's interesting that you have that background in payments or kind of payment rails and things like that with Ripple, because I think that that's a great point you just made. Most of everything that we are transacting with NFTs, it's priced in ETH. And I think that might be a little bit of an adoption hurdle, right? Where if we price everything in USDC instead of ETH, that might be the situation where we get maybe more adoption. Is that kind of what I'm hearing from your end?
Yeah, it's funny because I just wrote a blog about this, talking about DAI versus Ether in terms of should the non-fungible token markets adopt DAI as the number one payment method instead of Ether. And it's funny because my conclusion was basically, yes, we should adopt DAI because people understand the dollar, and people don't. It'd be terrible for mass market adoption for people to be like, I spent $100 on this thing in Ether, and then suddenly now it's it's worth $50. Like what? So that's not great for mainstream adoption. But it's funny because that's my conclusion that hey, we should use DAI. But I said in the blog, I said, me personally, I want to use Ether because I want more Ether, right? So it's kind of, the problem is we start from the get-go with Ether, and now people are used to it, and people like me who like crypto want to get more of it. And so that's kind of, it's a big hurdle we have to get over, because I'm, my preference is Ether, but I know there's marketplaces that are opening up, like Foundation. They're actually only using DAI, which I think is a really good step to kind of force people down this path, which is funny because I like optionality. I like kind of choosing whatever I want to do, but I think it's kind of smart to kind of force people to use a stable coin because it'll enable wider audiences to get involved.
Gotcha. Yeah, I always step in front of Dima when we're talking about stablecoins, but it's super interesting that you have that background. Usually NFT people, they have that background in gaming or collecting. When you're talking about having that background in stablecoins and in different payment rails, that's really cool. So do you have something there?
Yeah. I was gonna.
Sorry, I don't know. I don't have a background in it. I basically tried something and it failed, and it was
that's a background.
But it was like a a couple month project. It wasn't even like it didn't even get off the ground basically. So, but I mean, I learned about it. So maybe that counts.
That's very interesting that you mentioned you did that in Dubai, right? And I know that Ripple is actually very popular in Latin America. And they're all about remittance of payments there, and it's very huge there. I never heard of Dubai being kind of into that as well.
They're not.
But they're not. I guess. Okay, that makes sense.
Got it. Okay, so let's kind of jump back into this timeline. So you're into NFTs now. I remember hearing about you. Maybe I believe it's the first time I ever kind of even heard your name was around that CryptoVoxels piece, which you kind of wrote about valuing virtual real estate and how you bought CryptoVoxels early. So kind of take us through your adoption of NFTs. I know you said CryptoKitties. I think a lot of us that were in 2017, we dabbled and lost some money in CryptoKitties. But past that moment, what other things were interesting you? I know, again, CryptoVoxels is one, but what are some others?
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of bucket the NFT ecosystem or NFT markets into 5 rough categories. Number 1 is collectibles. These are assets with little to no utility. You can think of them like baseball cards. And a good example from the NFT land is CryptoPunks, right? Number 2 is game assets. These are assets with high levels of utility within their universe. You can think of it like a sword in World of Warcraft that has 10 plus attack power, right? So maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. It depends. And then number 3, so in the example for NFT world is Axie Infinity. They have certain attack, defense, whatever. And then number 3 is virtual land. And virtual land it's kind of hard to define, but I like to call them user-owned social, e-commerce, gaming, and creative platforms all rolled into one. So I think those are super powerful. The example for the real world or whatever is probably Second Life, where there's no real objective. You just kind of Second Life or Roblox. You just kind of like do whatever you want. And I think that's a super, super powerful thing that is going to only increase in popularity. And the example in NFT world is, CryptoVoxels, DCL, Somnium, et cetera. And then number 4 is crypto art. that is art that has been tokenized and put on a blockchain. I'm really excited about crypto art. And yeah, there's not too much to explain there. It's kind of self-explanatory. And then lastly is number 5 is other. And that includes like, insurance contracts, physical goods with NFT certificates, domain names, like all sorts of different stuff. And those markets are kind of self-contained right now and a little bit smaller, but I do think that they're going to expand. Each one of those categories is going to grow. Like if we talk in like a year from now, it's going to be like 10 different things, right? At least, that's my hope. But yeah, that's kind of how I define the marketplace today. And I wrote that piece about crypto voxels, back in the day, basically because when I started entering the market in early 2019, I was looking at the potential here, and I'm most excited about virtual lands. I think that's, to me, the closest iteration that we have to a metaverse, because the metaverse is, it's kind of a mixture. It's not just one thing. It's very hard to define the metaverse because, like, I guess Zoom is part of the metaverse. I guess Facebook is unfortunately, part of the metaverse. So it's like, it's all these different things. But when you're inside a virtual world and you can like make virtual shoes and sell virtual shoes and walk to your neighbor and say hi, click V for voice chat and be like, hey, what's up, dude? That to me is very, very powerful and really, really exciting. And that to me is like what the metaverse is all about. And so I was looking at Decentraland and crypto voxels because that's what was really available back then. And Decentraland to me was like pretty overvalued for something that hadn't launched yet. And crypto voxels was, you could walk in world, you could build stuff. It was very simple and very Minecraft-like. But I thought, okay, I looked at the fundamentals: team, product, token economics, community, etc. And team was great. Ben Nolan, founder, he just one-man army. The community was stellar. They were super passionate about it. People were building content in world. It's very accessible. You just log into a browser and click enter world. And so kind of these factors lined up. And I thought, okay, wow, it's severely undervalued comparative to DCL. I think DCL is kind of this higher end experience. So you got to factor that into the price. But still, like even factoring in that discount, I was like, wow, this is really undervalued. And it just so happened that I was entering right when Frankfurt was launching. Mm-hmm. And Frankfurt is the only area in Origin City, which is like the main area in crypto voxels, with the tallest height limit, right? So I was able to buy a lot of these buildings with tall height limits. So it's the tallest in the game or world. And so that was super fortunate timing. But yeah, that's basically how I looked at it.
That's awesome. Actually, before the interview, I was talking to Q, and it popped into my head. We always talk about the metaverse, but we never actually like, what is a metaverse, right? And it's funny, he gave me a definition of how he sees it, and I'm glad you brought it up as well and kind of explain it, because there's really many different ways you can kind of explain it, and some people might assign it to one thing and not like kind of overall big thing, like you mentioned Zoom or Facebook or even Twitter, could be considered as a metaverse of itself. I wanted to also mention in terms of the not to go back too far, but about the stable coins, DAI is also not as easily accessible, compared to other stable dollars, right? It does have its pros and cons, right? In terms of if you compare it to other stable dollars, but do you think maybe down the road, these, virtual reality metaverses where you have properties, right? Do you think they will eventually move into having, like, let's say, stable dollar that's maybe like USDC or something that's more easier accessible than, maybe DAI or ETH, but also have the option, right? Because there are those people that want to accumulate more ETH, let's say, or have those products as well.
Yeah, no, really good point you bring up. I think that platforms are going to basically enable like a lot of optionality, like especially these metaverse platforms. What I'm seeing now is that they're just like, hey, use kind of what you want. I mean, some of them do that. Some of them are one of these kind of more controlled environments. So yeah, it's interesting. And I agree with you that like USDC for me is more accessible than DAI is, which is kind of interesting because I prefer DAI in the sense that it's more decentralized, I guess. Like I'm not worried about, not that I don't think Coinbase is going to like seize my USDC or whatever, but just having that, the ability for them to do so is kind of worrisome. And my whole thesis is property rights. And that kind of like doesn't vibe with my thesis, right? And so even though I find USDC more usable and I would love if people were starting using USDC, I think I can't really promote that because I have to go with DAI, right? Or else it's like, I'm not, eating my own medicine or whatever you call it.
Right.
All right, I don't want to jump around too much, so I kind of want to flow back into the land conversation. But before then, you're big on statistics. I love kind of the stuff that you're putting out via tweets on my Twitter timeline that show up and keep me informed. What are some moments, or could you get to specific moments that kind of launched NFTs into another trajectory? I think what we saw with the conversion with DeFi at the end of the summer, I think kind of shot DeFi up a little bit. Axie's been a great moment. CryptoKitties. I think OpenSea is something that probably is up for discussion too. I think the evolution of OpenSea has made NFTs more accessible to the broad group. But from your perspective, what kind of moments in time led to more adoption of NFTs?
Yeah, no, really good question. It's hard to define before the DeFi run, basically, because it before the DeFi run in traditional and like regular NFT markets, different sectors will ebb and flow, and for reasons that are based off of like marketing, narrative, hype, like just like people are excited about virtual land, and like suddenly virtual land's like top of the charts, and then suddenly people are excited about trading card games, and like Gods Unchained is like top. So there's all these different narratives, and things ebb and flow. So you can have virtual land, for example, on month one, and then it kind of dies down, and then month 6 it's now hot again, right? So it's interesting that happens. But yeah, speaking about the DeFi run, is that obviously everyone watching this knows that DeFi went crazy this summer, and really for a large portion of this year, and we kind of saw that a little bit start to peter out with like sushi, like after the whole sushi debacle, like people started kind of looking at, okay, maybe this is ending. Where else should I go for my 100x gains? And so NFTs were just like this thing that no one really, they were kind of this like the ugly stepchild or whatever, and people were like, oh cool, like I can go in here and maybe make 100x. And we saw a flood of new participants enter the space, which is great for us. And it was interesting though, because people entered it, and one question I always saw was like, hey, what coin should I buy for easy NFT exposure? And NFTs are appealing for myself because there is no easy way to, you can't, like, there's no NFT token, right? You can't buy it and just be like, oh, it's going to moon because NFTs are hot. There are like things that are associated with NFTs that might, by nature of being close to the markets, are going to do well. But it's really hard you can't just be new and enter the NFT markets and expect to like make money. You have to really dive into each project and really like immerse yourself in it and research like much more than you would in a I think a regular token. Because if token's hyped, like no matter what it is, you can do really well. But with NFTs, it takes a long time for a project to actually reach escape velocity or get really hyped. If you look at like Axies, for example, they've been grinding for like years, and they've done pivots, and they've constantly iterating their product and constantly working on it. And Jiho, he's one of the founders there, and he's just a beast. He's like constantly, I don't know where he gets his energy, honestly. And so to see that their success, and like a lot of people are like, oh wow, suddenly they're they're so big out of nowhere. It's like, no, they've been working towards this for years, and now it's finally paying off, right? And so I think they hit the timing really well, because they've been grinding for a long time, and they're a very high quality project, and they have a very diverse, interesting ecosystem that people can kind of learn about. And when they learn about one aspect, they want to learn about the other, and battling and land and all this stuff. And so it was just great timing for them, and all the hard work is kind of paying off, and they're crushing it now. So yeah, it's interesting to see how things kind of ebb and flow, and just the way the markets work in the NFT space, because it's a little bit different. It's the same in the sense of narrative and hype and excitement is the same, but in terms of what actually appreciates in value is different, and it's harder to acquire in NFTs.
Yeah, it seems like the outsized returns are found in the actual assets. I know we had Yatsui on from Animoca Brands, and he was talking about the platforms actually serving the assets. Whereas, in previous history, as far as gaming is concerned, and a lot of different platforms, the assets almost live to serve the actual platform itself. So that change is definitely different. But you could technically say, you could invest in Mana, or you can invest in Sand as like a platform play. So from your perspective, you're looking at the actual assets themselves as opposed to the protocol tokens when you're coming to investments.
Yeah, I would look at both for sure. I would look at the entire ecosystem and see how things kind of interplayed, with each other. But I'm more focused on NFTs directly. But also, you bring up a really good point. If you want exposure to DCL, Mana is a great play. If you want exposure to the sandbox, Sand is a great play, right? But but I really think that for me, in my experience, the larger gains can be found with NFTs directly. But no, not to say that I'm sure there's gonna be some token that's associated with a virtual world or project that's gonna really do incredibly well. And there already have been some ones that have done, extremely well. But I still think that we still haven't seen like the I don't know, like the big one. I still think that's still yet to come.
I think, yeah, Andrew, you bring up a very good point in terms of having an index for an NFT sector would be great to have like a basket, maybe weighted, constantly adjusted, perhaps for those people that do want just like boom, one type of deal, exposure to multiple areas of NFT sectors. So that's something that would be really great. And I think I'm looking forward to see that. I think we'll see those products roll out into the market. They'll give the ability to do that.
It might be Whale.
Yeah, I mean, Whale is definitely one of them. But if let's say you would have Whale part of the index as well as others, that could be a big basket that gives you exposure to everything. I wanted to ask you, just in general, also I've seen personally, I don't know, I bring this up all the time when I talk to the people in the NFT sector, is that we've seen the overall growth in just collectibles coming back, traditional collectibles. Like I've seen streamers do Pokemon trading, right? Or like, there's like cards selling for like thousands of dollars. It's like, what is going on? You can't even play card games anymore because you can't meet people because of what's going on. But like, why the collectibles have come back, and is that helping NFT, or do you think those collectibles, those collectors that traditionally have been doing this, they're giving me like, okay, wait a minute, there's NFTs electronic version, let me hop into that? Or is it just the people in crypto that are like realizing the NFT side of things, or is it a combination of both?
No, that's a super, super good question. I've been wondering that myself because, when you're seeing shiny Charizards go for like 200K, you're like, wait, what's happening? Yeah. So, I don't have a good answer. I have just a theory that, the Fed is printing unlimited amounts of money, right? And so the dollar is devaluing. I think people are kind of coming to the realization that, wait a second, this is all kind of like funny money and they can just do whatever they want. Like there's no rules. Like this is confusing. And so that's, I think people are coming to that realization. They're saying, okay, what actually has value? And it comes down to, I think a lot of it is like scarcity, and a community believes in some sort of narrative. So for example, like with Pokemon, you have scarcity, there's not many shiny Charizards. The community, there's a large community of Pokemon card collectors, so that all validate each other. And then you have a previous sales history, which kind of reinforces that narrative of, I'm sure the Charizard that sold for 200K or whatever, I'm sure it didn't go from like someone opening it to 200K. I'm sure like there's been a lot of examples of other Charizards going for, $100, then $1,000, then 10,000, right? So it's kind of built that up. And so people are kind of seeing that. But it's interesting because, I don't know, I feel like the whole market, especially in this environment right now, so much of the traditional stock market and markets in general are just kind of a little bit out of whack. And so much is driven by narrative. Like if you look at like Nikola, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but they're the Tesla competitor. Like that whole debacle, like, they had a car that like, or a truck that they like pushed down a hill and they filmed it, and to show that like, hey, this truck is actually moving on its own and we have a working prototype. But then they actually, it was on a slope, but they angled the camera to make it look like it was driving, right? And that company is valued at, I think it's like $2 billion. I could be wrong. And it's traded on the stock market.
Yeah.
We've gone into the crazy world, right? So I think it's a little bit of people are coming to the realization that, wait a second, what is valuable? And I think collectible assets are just like well positioned to take advantage of this trend of just craziness.
Yeah, I want to jump down a rabbit hole real quick. I had this conversation with Yatsui off the recording last time, and I didn't get his take while we were live. We've talked about kind of the characteristics that go along with some of these, I guess you could say, collectibles, pieces of land, game data, and the ability for blockchain to, like, I guess, ascribe to the actual item. The one issue I have with what's happened with non-fungible tokens, and what I feel is missing, is maybe a certification process on what the item has done. I know you were on Bankless the other day talking about how the ability for an item to be shown that it was owned maybe by Vitalik gives it more value. The issue that I'm trying to kind of raise here is like the items do things, and a lot of times items in the meat space do things, and that actually gives them value, but you can't ascribe that to NFTs now. So for example, and the two examples I use are Freddie Mercury at the Wembley. And as well as Jesus's Cup. You have Freddie Mercury at Wembley playing that guitar that actually did something. Now it belonged to Freddie Mercury, but what the blockchain doesn't show us, or what it wouldn't show us, is that it happened on that date, something that happened in that moment. Not just that he owned it, but the fact that that guitar at Wembley probably is valued more, obviously, than just another guitar that he owned. So just data past specific ownership. I think you could say the same for Jesus's cup, right? There's thousands of cups. Jesus probably owned some cups in his lifetime, but that specific one at the Last Supper, being able to say this is the one, that's what gives it value. I wonder if you could follow me down that rabbit hole. I feel like that doesn't exist in blockchain now, that type of value.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I've never actually thought of that, how you framed the question there. But it's so for example, the guitar example, people see that guitar being played, and maybe after the concert he tells people, hey, this is the actual guitar, and then I was playing out there and everyone's like, well, that's so sick, it's so much more valuable, whatever. But so like if Vitalik owned my CryptoKitty, people would just have to see that. It's kind of like, I mean, I guess maybe you could somehow input it into the blockchain that like he actually did it, and he actually Vitalik actually like did XYZ with this CryptoKitty, and it was so cool or whatever. That's interesting, because before it's like, okay, it's an outside factor. Everyone just sees the guitar. He tells everyone this is the same guitar, and then Vitalik, everyone sees him doing the CryptoKitty, and then it's his exact same CryptoKitty. But I don't really know if people can input the data of actions inside of an NFT today. But like the cool thing about NFTs and crypto in general is that it's programmable, and I'm sure some smart person is going to be like, hey, they're going to listen to this, they're going to be, I want to do that, and they're going to make it, right? So that's what's so cool about this ecosystem, is that everything that we're talking about is programmable. It's like a programmable like life, I guess.
We'll see that in 1 week. We usually talk about it, and then next week something comes out. We're like, damn, we just talked about it.
There you go.
So
Yeah.
I think a good example that Q gave when he was explaining this idea to me is that, let's say in this Decentraland or some metaverse that virtual world that you're playing in, let's say there's a team that's playing like soccer, right? And they have like jerseys, right? And the jersey is an NFT of itself. And then if that team won, let's say, then you can have that jersey and the player that was playing with it, right? Kind of like in the real world. So you can actually see that player playing in that, world, and kind of have the history there.
That's actually where it clicked for me. That Decentraland was running a tournament, and I was like, watching this Crypto World Cup, the first ever Crypto World Cup, and I was like, wow, it really dawned on me, because I bought a Metafactory edition. So each team got 100 editions of this Metafactory jersey. But it dawned on me that I would pay more to have one of the 5 jerseys that was on the field. But there was no way for me to see, other than maybe trusting the ownership. But I just wanted the one that was on the field. But there's no... Thanks for following me down this rabbit hole, guys,
cool.
as well as people that are listening. We can have this discussion post interview as well. I want to stay on schedule a little bit. Let's talk on land. You spoke on land being maybe something that you were interested in the most from an investment perspective. I agree with you that it's the most entertaining. I think like people that talk NFTs, they always want to know about getting more CryptoVoxels land, Sandbox land. I think people just naturally flow to land. What's your investment thesis there? And I had a specific question as well on what Ben was doing with inflating the land supply. Do you think that was a wrong move? I know there was a ton of kickback from that community. So kind of just give me your primer on land.
Okay, so virtual lands, blockchain-based virtual land to be more specific. I think, again, it goes back to the optionality that the users have. So users, when they buy a piece of land in most of these worlds, they can build a gaming platform or like a little mini game if they know how to code, which is incredible. They can build an e-commerce store. They can actually sell other NFTs and earn revenue from that. That's incredibly cool. They can just get creative and kind of go in the flow state and build some cool statue or build some cool structure. Like that's really fun and kind of therapeutic. Basically, like it's whatever they want to do, which is so exciting, right? And on top of that, it's user owned. So if I go on to Facebook, let's just pretend, like so if Facebook said, no, actually I used that example already. Hey, Roblox. So Roblox is a game where it's very open ended, just like there's no objective, and you can build games within Roblox. So and they're really simple, like soccer and other fun, simple stuff. And so users are adding value to Roblox by building these little mini games that other users can go and play in, right? So it's like a meta game platform because it's games within games, right? And it'd be really cool if Roblox was blockchain based and there was some way for users that are adding value to this platform to have upside in the platform. So right when I buy a CryptoVoxels platform or parcel, I can do anything I want with it. So that's great. But then also I'm incentivized to tell other people about it because I have ownership. And if more users come into the world and start building cool stuff and, start, I don't know, using different stuff and whatever, adding value, then I receive some upside and so do they. So it's a really, really, it's totally flipping I think what you're talking about, what Yacht said from the Sandbox or Animoca, it's totally flipping the paradigm of gaming and ownership in the digital world because, I'm not earning any money from using Facebook or Instagram or any of that stuff. Right. But if I were using it, that'd be pretty cool. I'd be really happy. And especially it's interesting because the earlier you are in these platforms, if you were one of the first people that used Facebook and Facebook, it was issuing the Facebook token or whatever, and then it ended up being a couple billion users, you could retire, which I think is really, really interesting. And basically I see blockchain-based virtual worlds as this user-owned, multifaceted platforms that really flip the paradigm of the internet on its head, and it empowers the users.
All these ideas are really great and amazing. They sound very good on paper, but the question that I ask all the time is when when are we gonna have users? Because when are we gonna have people that are gonna be not only just kind of investing in these platforms or in buying properties, but have actually people that spend time there? Because Decentraland has been around for a while, right? It's not a new project, right? So it's will we see Decentraland kind of change and start picking up in usage, or will we see some of the competitors like Sandbox trying to attract users and that really picking up? It seems like now is really the perfect time because in this environment where everybody's kind of sitting home and everybody wants to interact with each other, especially like I mentioned before, doing conferences. Why is nobody doing this?
Yeah, no. So really good question. Before, I just want to hit upon the CryptoVoxels land inflation because I know Q, you asked that. So when Ben, the founder of CryptoVoxels, first kind of started, everyone knew he was eventually going to issue more land once he completed Origin City, which is the main area. He was going to start making islands off the main area, and everyone knew that was going to happen. I expected it to be 4 to 5 months after he completed Origin City because he said, "I'm going to take a break. I'm not going to mint any more land. I'm going to wait." And it was actually 2 weeks after he started, and I was like, "What the?" I was pretty mad. I made my feelings known in the Discord, and I'm not very active in Discord, so people were like, "Oh, geez," no. So at the end of the day, it's all these are venture capital style investments. What you're doing is I have faith in the team and the market. So is this a growing market? Yes. Do I have faith in Ben? Yes. At the end of the day, it's his project, his baby. He's a one-man show. And I'm just one user in this platform. And I think other people were not happy as well. But there's 3,026 total parcels on the main island, right? So if you want to grow into a portion of the metaverse that's even remotely relevant, you're going to need 1 million pieces of land. If Facebook only allowed 3,000 people when they first started, I know it's a bad analogy, but it wouldn't be that big, right? And also it prices out new participants. Because if I'm a new guy, I don't want to go. That's the main reason why I didn't jump into DCL right away is because I was like, oh man, this is so expensive. I'm just learning about this. I don't want to spend $500 on something I'm just learning about. But it's the land inflation is unfortunately necessary for right now, and just something that you need to do in order to bring on new users and make it more affordable. Anyways, all right. So Dimitri, your question was about why have we not seen quicker adoption? And it goes down to we're so early that it's crazy. And us three and everyone watching is in this bubble that we don't even realize. But crypto, mainstream crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, there's roughly 50 million users worldwide that are active in space. And active means maybe you buy an Ethereum every now and again or whatever. And so not that many. It's extremely, extremely small. And then if you look at DeFi, it's 100 to 200,000 active DeFi users, right? So again, extremely tiny. And you go into NFTs, OpenSea, which is the #1 NFT exchange, they have, I think it was 27,000 unique wallets that have interacted with OpenSea. 27,000. And I have like 10 wallets. So, I don't know what the actual number is, but you have to imagine that, okay, worldwide, let's not just look at OpenSea, let's look at Super Rare and all these other platforms. You got to imagine like 30,000 people worldwide are involved and active in NFTs. That is like, that's nothing. That's not even like a football game, right?
Yeah.
So we're just so incredibly early. And again, it goes back to the usability. So like people have been saying VR is like the future for like 30 years, right?
Yeah, that's
and
true.
it's still like not here. And it goes back to being like the usability. Like when I put on a headset, and I love VR, right? It's amazing. But when I put it on, I get a little sick. I don't feel that well after 20 minutes, and it's kind of heavy on my head, and I sweat, and I'm like, oh, it's not that. It's kind of like it's not as easy as logging into a computer. So when they figure that out, and they will, then the usability will skyrocket and more people will use it. So just like when they figure out NFTs, making the barriers very, very minimal and making it very easy, then I think that the usage will skyrocket. But again, it's going to take a long time. And one thing I learned about being crypto for a while is that trends take a lot longer than I expect. And I think that I thought that in 2017 everyone's going to be using Bitcoin by 2018. It takes years.
I think it throws people off that all of these NFTs are being purchased for a large amount of money, because then they kind of use that as their reference point to say, oh, this should be more mass adopted. But what you have in the Ethereum ecosystem is a people with a lot of purchasing power. Those, you say 28,000 people, but those 28,000 people probably have more purchasing power than the average world, even US population. So it throws people off. They're like, why isn't this adopted? Well, like your point says, it's 28,000 people. Dimitri, if you're so on this event, man, you should start it. I'm behind you. I will get this started with you. I guess, we're coming up to the end of the episode a little bit. I think we have about 10 or 15 more minutes. You touched on Facebook launching their own token, and I think that is kind of seen in social tokens. Social tokens have been a really interesting kind of primitive that is launched over the past, I would say 3, 4, 5 months we've seen. Where does the mesh come in with NFTs and social tokens? And let me know what you think about social tokens as well. Do you see a mesh there with NFTs?
Yeah, so my firm's focus is on the Metaverse. I call it the first Metaverse native investment fund, right? It's kind of a sexy term I like to use that's very broad, and it's purposely very broad because who knows what type of new devices and tokens people are going to create in the future. But I see them very connected to this Metaverse ecosystem, and NFTs are like the stuff in the Metaverse. Crypto is like the money of the Metaverse, and I think social tokens are a really, really cool and interesting way for influencers and communities and creators to formulate like all sorts of different types of methods to interact with their audience and encourage certain behaviors and do all sorts of weird stuff that I don't even know of. And what's so cool about them is that people will launch a social token, and then their functionality is built on over time. So it's not like when you launch a blockchain-based system, you need the tokenomics to be like absolutely set in stone, or else like it could totally mess up the whole protocol. But what's so exciting about social tokens is that they're open-ended. It's like, listen, we're going to launch it right now. It's used for XYZ. But in the future, we want to do it. We want to implement it for all this other stuff, right? So this whole cool ecosystem can evolve around this community or individual. And it goes back to empowering users and empowering communities and empowering like these new creatives of the internet, which I think that like blockchain really does an incredible job doing. And I think social tokens are like this very, very small market today that, just like NFTs, are going to grow into something absolutely massive.
As far as NFTs are concerned, we're running up to the end of the episode. What are we missing in the NFT industry that could kind of bring us into further adoption? What services or tools or platforms are we missing that could further maybe people getting interested in NFTs?
Yeah, it's tough to say, but I think, again, I hate to just repeat this, but it's like usability and just ease of use. So if people could plug in their credit card to OpenSea and not have to deal with like MetaMask, I think that would be crazy. Like that would be so nuts for the ecosystem. If people could just buy an asset or like an NFT as easy as you can buy something off of Amazon, like, oh my gosh, like I think it would do wonders. But there still is that big mental barrier for people purchasing digital goods, especially spending significant amounts of money on digital goods. So like, when I talk to my mother about NFTs, she gets it more than she gets Bitcoin. Because when I'm trying to explain Bitcoin to her, I'm like, yeah, down with the Fed, dollars, bad, whatever. Bitcoin's this new thing. And she's like, I don't really get it. And money itself is esoteric. But I tell her about NFTs. She's like, oh, so you play a video game and you can actually earn an asset and then sell it for money. I go, yes. So she gets that. But still, she's like, okay, I get that, but I don't want a piece of digital art, But that's funny because when I talk to my little brother and little sister, who are I think 17 and 20, they're like, of course, digital. It's not even like a question of, wait a second, so why is it a value? Because they grew up with buying digital stuff, so they're like, oh yeah, of course. I mean, there's a digital art market and like this, ecosystem of virtual worlds and land and all this stuff. They think that the dollar amounts are pretty high, but they're not second guessing the nature of buying digital stuff, which is really, really good.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. It's funny because I've had these conversations with my parents as well. I try to explain to him, well, there's Bitcoin, there's also other tokens, and by the way, there's liquidity mining and DeFi, and then it's like, what are you talking about? Speak English, or in my case, Russian, But yeah, man, it's been really a fantastic interview, Andrew. It's really been a pleasure, talking to you and all the stuff that you shared with us. Q, did you have something that you
No, not really. I mean, Andrew, is there anything that we didn't touch on here that you like to kind of discuss from an NFT perspective, or let people know about what you're doing with Zima, and otherwise we'll head off here?
No, I think this was an awesome interview. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. And no, I think if you want to learn more about NFTs, then I have a newsletter and podcast called Zima Red. Just check that out.
Awesome, man. Well, the last question we always ask all of our guests is a book recommendation. Let us know what the book recommendation for all those people listening out there.
All right. So I'm currently reading a book called Kleptopia, and it's kind of negative in the sense that it's really talking about how the worldwide political system has basically gone into cahoots with, corporations, and in the sense that now via lobbying, almost like corruption has been legalized in some sense. And it's not like an American problem, it's a worldwide problem. And so bad behavior by wealthy people is allowed, and kind of there's ways to do it legally. Meanwhile, bad behavior by everyone else is like punished. So it's kind of talking about how we got to that system and how we're going to fix it. And I haven't gotten to the how we're going to fix it part, but I think the metaverse and crypto is going to be a big way of how we kind of fix the system and fix the wrongs that are currently in the world.
Boom. That's some optimism there. I love getting the optimism on a weekly basis. But Andrew, it's been a great episode here. We are glad to have you. Hopefully we can have you on in like 6 months time and go over what you've been doing in the NFT space, man. I can't wait to build this industry together with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to check out Layer 1 on all the audio and video platforms listed in the description. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next week.